That small plastic flap at the back of every grocery cart basket is not a manufacturing leftover. It is a theft prevention device, and it works by exploiting a blind spot in human psychology that retailers figured out decades ago. Here is what you are going to learn: what that flap actually does, why it is shaped and positioned exactly the way it is, how it changed shoplifting rates when it was introduced, where the design came from, and why some stores quietly removed it and then brought it back. Grocery carts did not always have that flap. The original Sylvan Goldman cart from 1937 was basically two wire baskets on a folding frame. It was all open wire, all the time. By the 1960s and 70s, cart designs started getting more sophisticated as retailers realized that cart design directly influenced purchasing behavior. Bigger baskets meant bigger purchases. Lower sides meant items were visible to other shoppers, creating social proof. And then stores started noticing something uncomfortable. People were walking out with unpaid items sitting in the undercarriage rack, the little shelf below the main basket. That bottom rack was designed for bulky items like paper towels or bottled water. But it had a problem. Cashiers could not always see it, and some shoppers were counting on exactly that. The plastic flap, sometimes called a modesty panel or a child seat backing, sits at the rear of the basket, just above the undercarriage. Here is what it does. It blocks the cashier's direct sightline to the front of the undercarriage rack. Wait, that sounds backwards. But here is the logic. The flap forces the cashier to consciously step around to the front of the cart to visually confirm the undercarriage is clear before completing the transaction. Without the flap, cashiers often glanced from the side and assumed the rack was empty. With the flap blocking part of the view, store protocols required a deliberate check. Some grocery chains in the 1990s reported that undercarriage theft, which accounted for a surprisingly high percentage of shrinkage, dropped noticeably after standardizing cart designs that included this prompted check feature. The flap is not the barrier. The flap is the reminder. It exploits the same principle as a speed bump. It does not stop the car, it forces a pause. Now here is where it gets more interesting. Not every chain implemented the flap for the same reason. Costco and warehouse stores use a completely different cart architecture. Their carts are enormous, flat-bottomed, no child seat, no modesty panel, and the undercarriage is intentionally wide open and brightly lit. That is not an accident. Warehouse retail operates on a different shrinkage model. Their items are large, their transaction values are high, and their staff-to-floor ratio is calibrated differently. The receipt check at the exit door is the primary loss prevention tool, not the cart design. So in those stores, the cart is designed for volume loading, and accountability happens at the door. Smaller grocery stores with faster checkout lanes and higher foot traffic use the cart itself as a built-in behavioral checkpoint. Same problem, two completely different design philosophies. The deeper reason the flap stuck around is that it serves a second function that most people never think about. That panel stiffens the rear wall of the basket. Grocery carts endure extraordinary abuse. They get rammed into each other at 40 nested per row, they get dropped off curbs, they get left in rain for days. The wire basket on its own flexes and deforms over time. The plastic rear panel acts as a structural brace, keeping the rear gate from warping and preventing items from sliding out through the gap between the basket and the child seat hinge. Without it, baskets on older carts would splay outward, and items would drop into the undercarriage without the shopper noticing. So the flap is simultaneously a behavioral cue for cashiers, a structural reinforcement for the basket, and a physical backstop for items near the rear of the cart. 3 functions. 1 piece of injection-molded polypropylene. Here is where the design failed. In the early 2000s, several regional grocery chains experimented with removing the flap to cut manufacturing costs. Polypropylene is cheap, but cart manufacturers were looking for ways to drop unit prices as chains renegotiated fleet contracts. Some chains switched to all-wire rear gates. Within 18 months, Two chains had reversed the decision after internal audits flagged increased undercarriage incidents and a rise in basket deformation complaints from store staff. The all-wire cart looked cleaner and felt lighter, but it quietly made the cashier's job harder and the basket less durable. The flap came back. Cost-cutting sometimes runs directly into operational reality, and this was a textbook case. This same logic shows up everywhere once you start looking. The little rubber bumpers on the underside of laptop lids exist partly to protect the screen and partly to create airflow, but they also prevent the lid from flexing and cracking at the hinge point under repeated opening. The raised lip on a sheet pan is not just to hold food. It stiffens the pan against warping at high oven temperatures. The extra strap loop on a quality backpack near the sternum is not for carrying weight. It is for preventing the shoulder straps from sliding off during dynamic movement. Designers routinely build in features that solve 2 or 3 problems at once, then market only one of the functions because one clear story is easier to sell. So next time you load your cart, look at that flap. It is solving a behavioral problem, a structural problem, and a logistics problem simultaneously, all in a piece of plastic that costs a manufacturer under $1 to produce. That is the difference between a design detail and a design decision. If this is your kind of thing, the why behind the everyday, Object Theory drops new ones every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.